necessarily know to look at it, but the Genesis GV70 has had a midlife update. It's by far the brand's best seller in Australia, but doesn't exactly trouble the major players. So is it now worth a closer look? The updated range starts at $78,500 plus on-road costs for the advanced 2.5T, stretching all the way up to this, the Signature Sport 3.5T. And this video is hopefully going to tell you everything you need to know about it. So let's start with the price. This is $100,000 neat plus on-road costs. And that initially took me by a bit of surprise because in my head this car was about 85 grand, 90 grand, and it turns out the pre-facelift was. This range-topping GV70 has gone up by about 15 grand, but there's more to it than that. Essentially, there are a couple of options packs previously that were $13,000 together, a Sportline pack and a luxury pack that's now included. So the only option on this car, which this car has, is the matte paint, which is another 2 grand. So $102,000 all in, no options, that's all you can spend. And while initially I thought 100 grand for a GV70, this is still a lot cheaper than all of its rivals. $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. If you look at the performance of this car and what it offers, Audi SQ5, 120 grand, BMW X3 M50, 130 grand, Merc AMG GLC 43, 140 grand or 137. Jaguar F-Pace Sport 400, doesn't really matter what you look at, this undercuts them by a fair amount, especially when you take into account, as I said, the performance and the kit on offer. But before we get into that, as you can probably hear on the camera, I have to talk to you about the all too common process before you even drive this car. Stop beeping at me. So basically every time you get in this car, thankfully you can do the shortcut here with the star button. You can program this. So you just hold that, you hold it to program it, and then you just program it for driver assistance. Speed limit warning off. Why would you do that? People go, why would, just don't speed. That would be fine if it got the speed limits right all the time. And this is pretty good, but you'll still get phantom, it'll still pick up signs that it shouldn't or get confused, and it will just incessantly bong at you. Driver attention, turn that off, because if you even just look away for a little bit, the camera here now just, again, admonishes you. Lane keep assist off, because all it does is constantly just grab the steering wheel. There's another one that announces red light and speed limit, speed cameras, which is technically good, except it softens, doesn't mute the audio, but it turns it right down, and that's really annoying. So essentially this is another car that just beeps and bongs at you all the time, and I have some sympathy with Genesis for that because they're forced to do it like every other manufacturer. But it's really annoying, and it's a real pain, especially if you're on short trips. You think, oh, I won't bother turning it all off, and then within 30 seconds you're like, I have to turn it off. So essentially every time you get in the car, 5-step process or whatever it is by the time you press everything. But there we go, rant over. Genesis and Hyundai are not alone in this, but hopefully they'll figure it out soon. Right, for 100 grand you get everything. I have heated and ventilated electric seats, I have an electric steering column, I have obviously LED lighting, I have triple zone climate control, I have heated rear seats, and obviously separate temperature controls in the back. I've got a head-up display, I've got wireless charging, I've got wireless smartphone mirroring, I've got this new 27-inch dual display, which is part of the GV70 facelift. I've got things you'd never even think about. I've got remote parking with the key. I've got a little, you put your phone in here and turn this on and it uses UV light to kill all the germs. We're really struggling to find things to get excited about. But we also have useful things. Electric tailgate, we have manually operated sun blinds, which as a parent is fantastic. More cars should have inbuilt sun blinds. It's really handy. Full length glass sunroof. What am I forgetting? I think it's got connected, app connectivity. We've got obviously proper nav. We've got everything you could possibly think of is included. Now let's talk about this interior, as it's a very nice place to be. It was a real USP at its original price point, but even at the new higher ask, it works really well. There's leather and soft touch surfaces everywhere, contrast double stitching, diamond quilted seats, a reclinable rear bench. Genesis has made a concerted effort to make this interior feel like a premium environment. Got a new little screen here for the HVAC controls, but they're proper buttons. Everything's always there, even though it's a digital screen. I can adjust fan speed at one touch. I can adjust the seats at one touch. I've still got a rotary dial for the temperature control. So I can adjust perfume in here. Heated steering wheel. Keep finding new things. The one flaw is maybe this rotary dial for the infotainment. It's a touchscreen infotainment system, so you don't really need it, but it's a bit loose and plasticky and feels a bit cheap and wobbly. Also, this rotary dial that is meant to look like glass, I think, but it's just plastic, and rotary dials in general are a bit of a pain. We've got a fingerprint scanner. I think that means you can just get in, press your fingerprint, and it will set up the car to your seating, your HVAC preferences, etc, etc. When it comes to practicality, more ticks. The back seat is plenty of room. I can sit back there perfectly comfortably behind myself or a passenger. Headroom's no problem. Width, again, you can recline the seat back. Plenty of toys back there with the heated seats. You can even, if you get annoyed that the passenger is not giving you enough room, you can lean forward and just adjust the passenger seat yourself, which is always pretty handy. Boot's pretty big, quite a high floor in it, but then it's got a temporary space saver underneath, so it's one of those things, you can't have it both ways. You can't have a bigger boot and then complain that there's an inflation kit, so they've got to put the spare wheel somewhere, and the cost is a higher boot floor, but it's still a pretty decent space. And when it comes to the driving experience, there's still plenty to like. I'll start with what we're doing now, just cruising along. I'd be amazed if there weren't a fleet of BMW X3s, including M40i's, used as benchmarking for this car, because that's kind of what it feels like they were going for. Especially with this car, it's the sound of the 6, even though it's a V6 instead of a straight 6. It's the way it delivers power, the sort of muted growl it has. Torque converter auto works very smoothly. It's an easy car to drive. The size of the car feels very good. It feels mid-sized. It's got plenty of room in the back, plenty of room in the boot, but you can sort of squeeze it into parking spaces that maybe you wouldn't in a car that feels bigger. Generally, it's very, very good. Very quiet, comfortable, refined. Once you turn, obviously, the annoying nannies off, it's a very soothing car to drive. I will nitpick a couple of things, which are just nitpicks. The steering, just off the straight ahead, it just feels like it's got a bit of friction to it, just a little bit of a dead zone in the middle. And the other thing is the ride. I've done a chassis revision on this, and I looked up my original review of the 2.5, which I did a few years ago, and I said it had quite an unsettled ride. It's not unsettled now. It can be a little bit kind of choppy on poor surfaces, which is probably the 21-inch wheels. And the biggest problem, though, I think, in comfort, feels like they've made it so soft that it takes a little while to settle. And you can get in a car like this and go, oh, well, it's soft, it must be comfortable. It is comfortable, but the body movement needs a little bit more body control. I think it actually rides a little bit better in sport. Yes, there's a little bit more, it's a little bit firmer, you feel the road a little bit more, but it controls its body in one movement. And I'm nitpicking a little bit here. I'm talking about things that, you know, would maybe take the car, if I had to score it from an 8 to a 9, rather than say go from a 6 to an 8 or 6 to a 9. It's good. Giulia Q, very cool car. Might just let him go because I don't think I'm going to drag off Giulia Q. So yeah, a couple of areas just that maybe hold it back from going, wow, this thing's really, really polished. It's very good. I'm used to it now. As soon as I got in it, the steering, I was like, oh, that could be a room for improvement. And I'm kind of used to it now. I don't really notice it. But, you know, sound boring, but compared to a Porsche, for instance, where you've got that perfect elasticity of response. But apart from that, the engine works really well in comfort. It feels relaxed and torquey. You can do a My mode that allows you to do sport for whatever you want, you know, sport engine, comfort for the rest, or sport chassis. And to be honest, in a real about face, I'd probably leave it in sport for the engine. Sorry, I'll leave it in sport for the chassis and go comfort steering and comfort engine, just when I'm driving around like this. The other thing is you can adjust the brake pedals, so I assume that means it's brake by wire, but again, the brake feel and comfort is fine, so I don't see any need to change that. But having covered now what this thing's like to just cruise around in, let's now tackle some corners and see if it's a worthy performance car. Do have a few drive modes to choose from, so I'm going to go straight through Sport and go to Sport Plus, which backs off the ESP, got much better throttle response now, and there we go. As we break into this tight corner, it gives me a downshift, also gives me a heap of extra steering weight, which I don't love, but I'll just, you know, I could adjust my mode to fix that, but I won't bother in this scenario. I'll just deal with it. So this Sport Plus mode is really quite aggressive. It's evidence that this thing is definitely designed to be a performance car, be a sports SUV, and it handles really well, which I remember from my initial review. One of the takeaways was, over driving it there with a bit of understeer, but one of the takeaways was how agile this thing was. It doesn't have the typical SUV understeer. If you get it turned in, it actually wants to step out a bit under power. It really sends plenty of drive to the rear. So it's still 2 tons, it's still a high riding SUV. There's a ceiling on how hard you can really drive this car. I'm not going to pretend it's necessarily a hot hatch, but whoever set this thing up enjoyed driving. It's agile, it's happy to move the rear end and get the rear end involved. It's got plenty of pace. On a dirt road, the fact that this thing is agile and rear biased would make it a real laugh, I reckon. I mean, I'm having fun, and that's the main thing. There we go, under brakes, just the rear end involved. Gets a bit sooky now, but we come through this sweeper again. Bit of rear throttle steer. Very good. Properly entertaining. Okay, so with that done, let's pop it back in comfort and try and wrap this thing up. Previously, the GV70 was a good car. Had a couple of niggling faults, but it kind of got away with them because it was so much cheaper than its rivals. But now with the refresh, it is hard to pick holes in. Even if it was the same price, you could make a case for it, I think. Maybe it's being overlooked because it's It's easy to say that it's just sort of a budget BMW X3 M50, but I think that does sell it short because it is an impressive car. Yes, there are a couple of little niggles perhaps, you know, you could refine the steering a fraction more, refine the ride a fraction more. The safety systems are annoying, but they are what they are. That's regulatory, you can't get around that. So it just ticks a lot of boxes. Refined, generally comfortable, incredible amount of equipment, value proposition is there. Yes, it's 100 grand, but if you look at what you get compared to rivals, it's definitely a value proposition. And perhaps the underrated part of this car is just how entertaining it is to drive. So maybe if there's one takeaway from this video, hopefully that's your takeaway. And it's an appropriately addicted to sliding takeaway. This is a really entertaining car to drive. If you like to really press on but you need a family car, this is going to put a smile on your face. It's happy to oversteer. It's happy to oversteer under brakes. It's happy to oversteer under power. And that, as long as you don't ask too much of it, is a recipe for driving enjoyment. So, let me know what you think about the GV70. If you want to see more reviews like this, in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.